Craige and Roz Mackenzie are based in mid-Canterbury, farming 530 hectares in total. They've been quick to embrace technology and precision agriculture in their businesses. They have 200 hectares under intensive arable cultivation, and they run dairy cows on 330 hectares in an equity partnership on a property adjacent to the arable operation. The Mackenzies were recognised in 2013 when they won New Zealand's premier environmental farming award, the Gordon Stephenson Trophy, and the Balanced Farm Environment Awards.
I did a Nuffield Scholarship in 2008, and that was a bit of an impetus for some change. And the technology certainly is part of it. We were looking at profitability, but also, how are we going to reduce our environmental footprint? Because understanding our carbon footprint was my study topic. So it became pretty clear pretty quickly to me that precision ag was the fastest way to do that. To do that, you also need to have some very good staff around you, and our team is outstanding, and we've got to have the right people because technology is not for everybody. It gets pretty complicated at times. You can see the variation in the soil type, the lighter soils, the darkest bits here.
And you've got 8 mils going on there. The Balanced Farm Environment Awards has been a real accolade. It's something we're hugely proud to receive. It's given us an opportunity to meet with a whole range of different people, farmers, industry, researchers, and have a connection with them which we didn't have before. So that's been really cool. And it's also given us a voice. So now we can talk about some of the issues that there are in farming, and people do listen. So that's been really cool as well. From the technology point of view, we do collect a lot of data, and data's just data until you turn it into information. So that whole changing it into something useful is really important. A lot of people are quite intrigued by what we do. I think they look at some of the technology we use, and we do use a lot. Not all of what we do is going to fit on every farm, but often people can take bits of what we do and apply it to their own farms, and it will change depending on what the different farms are. But I'm pretty sure that there's something for everyone in what we do.
We've been grid soil sampling to make sure we know what's in every grid, and then we're only applying what we need to put into those areas. So, for example, we saved 45% of our base fertiliser in lime under the pivot area where the effluent goes. So we've certainly got a view that the effluent is a nutrient source. And also variable rate nitrogen. So often you don't need to put nitrogen where there is already the effluent's been. So we've been mapping that with a crop sensor, and also part of another project to know what we require in the different areas. The whole farm's been EM mapped, and so electromagnetic soil mapping to be able to make sure we know what the water holding capacities are of the soil.
So the numbers are looking pretty good this week, a lot higher with the 34 millimetres of rain.
Yep.
Certainly no requirement to irrigate out here for at least 4 to 5 days.
But we haven't hit the full point?
No, not yet.
We measure what goes in, we measure what's in the soil, and there's also a lysimeter on the property, so we're looking at where that sits all the time and looking whether there's any drainage. We've reduced our nitrogen input significantly, and we've got some other technology we're working on that will give us another 30% saving in nitrogen. Hand on the heart, absolutely, we can say that we've reduced our footprint significantly, and it's a really nice feeling that we not only are using less inputs, so that's good for the bottom line, but it's also good for the environment, and generally those two things, in my opinion, go hand in hand. This is what they call an eddy covariance tower. So this one's only measuring CO2 emissions at the moment, but they can put some more equipment on it to do nitrous oxide as well. So for us here, we were interested in what was happening on that side of the fence as the cows grazed it versus this side of the fence, and as you get this amount of pasture cover, is that CO2 actually being used within that canopy? And so, if we're going to go to an ETS, we need to have real numbers, I guess, and that's what this is about. For us, initially, you need to get a few years worth of data to see what's happening in this grazing phase. And when they did the nitrous oxide trials here, it was really interesting that we're deemed to have a nitrous oxide emission every time we put granular fertiliser on, and we're deemed to have that every time we get a rainfall event. But we had very little nitrous oxide coming out of here at all. So I guess the first thing is measure it and then work out what you're going to do with it and how you're going to be able to mitigate what you do. But if you don't measure it, you can't manage it at all. We have 200 hectares arable situation here. It's all fully irrigated, reasonably intensive, quite a wide range of different crops in our rotation. So radish and carrots and chicory and pak choi and onions, amongst other things. Wheat and ryegrass is still the basic part of our operation, and the others are break crops. So about a third wheat, a third ryegrass and a third break crops. Carrots, for argument's sake, are produced here and then it'll go back to Holland and then redistributed around the world. So 50% of the world's carrot seed production is done here in mid-Canterbury.
Yep. Perfect pollination, which is really interesting. Certainly hear the bees working today too.
We're using more technology here than probably at the dairy farm. So we're variable rate seeding with cereals. We're grid soil sampling again here, applying fertiliser by the zone at times, sometimes variable rate fungicide. Variable rate irrigation is very much important here. These crops take quite a lot more to manage than it does with a pasture-based system. All have different water use requirements, and so everyone's got different zones that are all treated differently. If you're going to be a good environmental farmer, you actually need to be profitable. So we need to help farmers be profitable, because otherwise they're just not going to invest in technology.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.